What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. I'm your host, Rating Denicio. And today I have with me an Army veteran, also the founder of Outpatch. And he's also a social entrepreneur, which we'll talk about that later on. Henry Rosario. What's going on, Henry?
Hey, Rid. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time. So I mentioned you're an Army veteran. Before we get started talking about what you're doing now, can you just share with our audience a little bit about your service, how long you served for, and what did you do in the Army?
Yeah, sure. I was a missile defense officer for the Patriot missile defense system, which has been around since the 80s, I think. So maybe a lot of folks cross generations know what it is, maybe like many military systems. Uh, so yeah, I served in Korea for 2 years and then based in Germany for 2 years.
Okay. And then, so about one enlistment.
Yeah, two duty stations.
Two duty
Yeah.
stations. Okay. And then, so you, after that, did you go back to school or did you, like, how was your transition out of the Army?
Yeah, so I did go back to school after I got out in Germany. I actually stayed in Europe to get my degree there and studied humanitarian aid. So the idea was to become an aid worker, international aid worker, work in the nonprofit sector.
Okay. Where did you go to school in Germany? And like, how can you explain, like, for those that might not be familiar, like, did you use your not VA loan, your
GI Bill.
GI Bill?
Yeah, I did. So uh, ending your contract while stationed overseas is its own exciting journey that if anyone has gone through that listening will know how complicated it can be. But yeah, I wanted to stay in Europe. My partner, now wife, was still in, and she was in Germany, so I wanted to stay close by. And then I found this program that I really liked that was actually multiple universities in Europe that offered this joint degree. So I did one semester in Germany and then one semester in the Netherlands, and then went actually to Australia for a semester. So it was a pretty great deal in terms of just continuing to live abroad and yeah, studying something that I was really passionate about.
Yeah, so you got to do a lot of traveling as well when you were going to school then.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome,
guess
man.
also, yes, I wasn't, yeah, I guess living abroad while on active duty is different than living abroad as a civilian. So wanted to experience that. And for anyone considering uh, pursuing any kind of degree abroad, you can use your GI Bill. Maybe folks don't know that, but uh, higher education tends to be a lot more inexpensive outside the United States. So it could be a pretty good deal.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So you went to school, you went to college, overseas in Europe. Um, when did you come back to the States, and how did the whole idea with this company Outpatch, like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I came back in 2019, so not too long ago. And the short story is, while I was studying to enter this nonprofit sector, it seemed like one of the biggest issues was that there were smaller local nonprofits that weren't getting really any funds. So my idea was, hey, uh, instead of being an international aid worker, can I maybe come up with some kind of business model that generates revenue for these smaller nonprofits? And that was really the genesis of the idea. And then because I am an avid traveler, uh, like a lot of folks, I've always wanted to give back to the places that have hosted me, that have shown me this incredible experience. But never really found an easy way to do that. You're not from there, so you don't know which nonprofits to donate to. And then a lot of travel money actually doesn't stay in the local economy. So I thought, hey, can I leverage the tourism industry um, to also generate this revenue stream for smaller nonprofits? And that was 2019, just on the cusp of COVID and a global pandemic. So it was really just absolutely perfect timing for a tourism-based business.
Right. Yeah, so you got back just in time before the whole pandemic
Yeah.
really hit, right? Um, like, so where are you located in the States?
I'm still in Vermont, so very, very central Vermont, in the tiny town of Tunbridge.
Okay. And then with the company, the profits that you earn go towards local nonprofits.
Yeah, so the basic idea was create a souvenir that people could buy, and the proceeds of that souvenir would benefit a nonprofit in the place that souvenir represents. So you're visiting Vermont, you buy this Vermont patch, and the proceeds would go to a Vermont nonprofit. And we did start in Vermont, but we're in 8 states now.
Okay.
So just launched in Pennsylvania yesterday, actually.
That's awesome, man. I mean, even despite the whole COVID and the pandemic, right? Like you guys were
Yeah.
able to, branch out throughout the country. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, can you explain to us like what were some of the obviously like the challenges that you faced? Like, can you talk about that and how were you able to overcome those?
Yeah. So we're set to launch this idea, and we're primarily focused on international travel. So you're traveling to Croatia, you'd buy the souvenir, go to a local Croatian nonprofit. And when COVID really started to set in, it was basically right before we were going to launch. And we decided pretty early on to pivot to the domestic market. So we said, oh, we're just going to do US states and focus on domestic travel. So that was a big decision, and it's allowed us to still grow and operate as a business. Obviously, even domestic travel took a huge hit during COVID and devastated a lot of the industry. So it was still quite a struggle to launch a brand new tourism-based business. But yeah, I my co-founder is a fellow Army vet that I served with in Korea. So we'd been in the trenches together. I guess, it was wasn't as bad as in many ways as what we'd faced in the Army. So,
Right.
kept trudging on.
How did you like how were you guys able to sort of like just branch out to the different states? Like how did that go about, like as far as um, you know, moving into different state after state?
Yeah, it's a great question, because obviously it was easier to launch in Vermont because I'm here. We launched in Colorado, where my co-founder is. But then it was a question of how we were going to do that. And what we found is, in every state we go, we partner with a nonprofit
Okay.
and an artist that designs these souvenir patches that we do. So right away, we're sort of plugged into their audience and their community, and that has really helped us grow organically and still be part of this larger community that we're trying to build.
That's awesome. Um, despite going through, starting a company with the global pandemic, trying to find your, um, branching out into different states and things like that. We talked about some of the obstacles that you had to overcome. What has been some of the, even though it's been a short couple of years, right? What's been some of the most rewarding moments you've had since you started this second service, this company?
Yeah, I feel like there are maybe two parts of that question. I'll start with the bad stuff, like the challenges. I think for any entrepreneur, there's a lot of self-doubt you're going to face inherently. A lot of people thinking that you're crazy, that your idea isn't going to work, and it's easy to believe them.
Right, right.
uh, so first step is just looking yourself in the mirror and really believing in what you're doing and gathering your core supporters, your core team, and continuing to drive on with the mission, even if you don't have a lot of support initially. So, leading into the most rewarding moments so far, I think it's really been when we've expanded into a new state, or just, reached out to retailers or whatever, and people that don't know us at all will say, like, wow, great idea, I love this. uh and it's funny, you expect your friends and family to be the ones that understand it the most, because they understand you the most in many ways, but that's not always the case. And it's just really incredible how complete strangers will just hear what you're saying and totally get it and totally be on board and want to hop on board with you. It's really rewarding.
Um, with some of the nonprofits that you guys partner with, are they specifically like within the tourism business, or like just different
Yeah,
nonprofits?
no, we get that question a lot, basically, like what nonprofits we choose to work with. And we decided early on we wanted to support a very uh, fundamental human need, which we decided on food, and healthy food and healthy food systems. So we mostly partner with nonprofits that are working on food insecurity, and mostly we try and partner with nonprofits that are working in the most economically disadvantaged counties in any given state, or areas or whatever. So that's been our thematic focus.
Okay. Um, so Henry, what's what's one actionable step that you can give our audience right now? Who might, I mentioned earlier, our audience are mainly veterans, maybe military members or transitioning out of the military. What's one actionable step that you can give them right now towards that pursuit of, their second service and finding their next mission?
Yeah, this is going to sound like such a simple, silly step, but uh, write down or draw what what you think your next step is, what you're trying to accomplish. And before you talk to people, or try and convince people that it's a great idea, just really write down what you're trying to accomplish, and then look in the mirror and read it to yourself and say, hey, is this worth doing, despite the risk, uh, despite fear of failure, whatever else. And once you answer that question, I think it'll be a lot easier to take the next step towards actually doing it.
Yeah, I think the key thing there is just kind of just being honest with yourself and knowing what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And obviously leaning towards what you're strong at, and um, what you're passionate about and what you want to do, right? Like, what would you want to do, um, even if though you might not get paid as much, right? Like, but it makes you
Yeah,
happy. It makes you happy. You feel like you're fulfilled, and you feel like you found that next mission, right? I think that's the most important thing in that as well.
yeah, that's really well said.
So I mentioned earlier, as a social entrepreneur, right? Can you just elaborate on that for us, Henry? Like, just talk to us about what you mean by that, like social entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's one of these terms that's been thrown around a lot in the last few years, and maybe because of that, one of those things that means everything, so it means nothing. Yeah, our definition of social entrepreneurship is that we are trying to tackle a social issue by leveraging market solutions. So in our case, we are trying to support these nonprofits that are strengthening their communities, tackling food insecurity in our case. And the way that we're doing that is by making it easier for travelers to give back while they're traveling. So that second component is the market-based component, but it's being leveraged in order to tackle this social issue.
Awesome, man. So what's kind of like the next step for you guys as far as with the company Outpatch?
Yeah, so we're actually at a pretty exciting stage right now. We've been in business only for 6 months and tested this model, and it's working, even in a global pandemic. So we are pursuing external capital essentially to scale our model across the country, and expect to do that next calendar year. So we've got a big grant competition next week, and a couple other opportunities in the chute that are hopefully going to allow us to expand our impact.
That's Henry, have you heard of Street Shares Foundation?
No.
So I know, I think it's November 6th to the 8th, Street Shares Foundation, and they do this every year. They have this competition between veteran-owned businesses, whether that be nonprofit or for profit. And they basically give grants to these companies. I think this year they're going to, I want to say Dallas or Houston. I think Houston, Texas. November 6th to the 8th. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, I can connect you with the owner, Mark Rockefeller.
Yeah, it seems like they do great work. And I will say, if you are listening to this and considering starting your own business, the support network for veteran entrepreneurs is pretty robust.
Right.
In the last probably 10 years, so many organizations have sprung up that really care about supporting us, and obviously fellow veterans really care about lifting each other up. So that there are a lot of people that want to help you.
Yeah, that's a great point. For any veterans out there thinking about starting their own business, there are plenty of organizations out there who will definitely assist you, whether that be financially or whatnot. That's a great point, Henry. Henry, before we go to our second segment of our podcast, what's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this episode?
I would say that you do have many opportunities to continue your service after separating from the military, if that ends up being your career trajectory. And I think a lot of veterans want that, and it can be sort of overwhelming to figure out how to navigate, how to do that. And I think there's a lot of pressure when you're separating to land that big corporate job or whatever to sustain your lifestyle or whatever else. But I think we should encourage more veterans to take time after separating to really think about what they want to do for the rest of their career, and you will discover that there are these many pathways, and yeah, give yourself the time to figure that out. And social entrepreneurship, as I explained it, and in the many other forms that it comes in, is a way for you to continue your service. So to create something that is going to solve a societal problem through the market, or through another creative means, is something that I think our country needs right now.
Mm.
And as veterans, we're the ones set to best do that.
Yeah, well, I think we're the best fit as to be, entrepreneurs, right? In that journey, because the military has taught us, a lot of things, being disciplined, resilient. Every one of us is hardworking, we're dedicated. And I think you're right. It's just trying to find that next purpose, that next mission, that next service. Um, we talked about earlier, like just being honest with yourself, knowing what you're strong at and what your weaknesses are, and just leaning towards those strengths and finding that next mission.
Absolutely.
All right, Henry. So this is our second segment of the podcast. This is what I call the Fast Five. This is same 5 questions I ask all my guests. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I feel like you sent these to me, and then I should have written down my answers. So maybe I'll come up with new answers, but I think I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, man. First question: what's one hobby you enjoy?
I love to read. Great way to learn.
If you had to choose, second question: if you had to choose one person to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Ooh, I do remember this answer. George Washington, because I actually, for an American, I feel like I haven't read enough about him, or know enough about him. So I'd love to meet him face to face, ask him some questions. Also, such an iconic figure.
Yeah.
And such an incredible leader. And I feel like he really put the burden on his shoulders to bring something new into the world, which was, a new form of government, a new conception of equality and freedom. And would love to ask him how he made it look so easy. No, I think we'd have a good time.
Yeah. Next question: recommend a book for our audience to read.
Ooh, I think your audience is going to hate me for recommending this, but I really loved Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. So it's a play, it's a movie. I guess that would be the easy way to to consume it. But I think it's such a great book about, a country, France, going through a lot of really chaotic changes, and how to navigate that as a society and as an individual, and do good.
I mean, yeah, I mean, compared to what we're seeing now, right? Like it's kind of relatable and in some sort of way.
Could be a good read. It's like 800 pages, but I still think it's still think you should read it.
That's definitely a read right there.
Yeah.
All right, next question: what's your favorite quote and why?
Ooh, I actually don't remember my answer for this, but one of my favorite quotes is by Amelia Earhart, and it's, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity." So basically, once you decide to do the thing, the road will take you. Now it's just applying grit and doing it. And I love it because I think so much of us get caught up in the what if stage that prevents us from doing what we know is right, or what we're capable of, or whatever else.
Yeah, I think for the most part, like we're like our own greatest enemy when it comes to right. Like we defeat ourselves in our minds before we even get started, and pursuing
Yeah,
whatever goal or, our next objective that may be. We stop ourselves
exactly.
short. And
Yeah.
that's a great quote. Um, all right, Henry, last question. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or maybe even 10 years from now?
Okay. In a year, I would really love if the world was normal again, or just more normal than it is now. Uh,
You know what? Like I've asked that question. Like that's probably like I can't remember one where it's like, yeah, can we go back to some sort of normalcy? But yeah, that's that. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, I think we're ready for it. Uh, and in 3 years, I would really love to feel like an established business. Right now, we're very scrappy, and that there's a lot of great things about being in the startup phase. Is that everything is new, everything's an adventure, but would love in 3 years to feel like we've really established something solid, like we know who we are, uh, and are making a sustained impact on a systematic level, right? Rather than just trying to survive day to day, even
Right.
though that can be fun. In in 5 years, I gosh, I'd love to have it all figured out: professional life, personal life, marriage, family. Uh, is that I would be 35? Is that when it happens, or how old are you, Raiden?
I'm way past 35 and I'm not that close to figuring all this stuff
Okay.
out.
Bit of a lofty goal, but I'll
Yeah.
still shoot for it.
Hey, aim high.
Aim high, yeah.
Awesome, man. So Henry, man, I appreciate you for taking the time and kind of just sharing your story and your second service, what you're doing now with Outpatch. One final thing, where can they follow you and where can they support you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, by the way. Great. It
Yeah.
really has been great to talk to you. It's always amazing to connect with other veterans in the veteran community. And yeah, for those interested in learning about what we do, you can go to outpatch.org and follow along on our newsletter or LinkedIn or Instagram and learn about how we're trying to make an impact in this world.
Awesome, Henry, man. Again, appreciate you for your time and thank you for what you're doing and and giving back to the community. I appreciate that, man.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
All right, Henry, take it easy. Take care.
You too.